Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Wynna Wong. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Ukraine hits out as Russia seizes Europe's largest nuclear power plant. More than 1 million Ukrainians seek refuge in the European Union, with more expected to follow. And new COVID cases in Hong Kong exceed 50,000 for the third day running. Russia has seized Europe's largest nuclear power plant as it escalated its offensive in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government denounced Russia for unleashing what it called nuclear terror, but there was no change in radiation levels. Sarah Wong reports.
Flames and smoke engulfed a nuclear reactor in the Zaporizhzhia power plant following heavy Russian shelling. The facility, located in the southeastern Ukrainian city of Chernobyl, is the largest of its kind in Europe. Gunfire barred firefighters from reaching the site. The blaze was eventually put out after burning for 4 hours. No deaths or injuries were reported. Local officials assured the International Atomic Energy Agency that there is no change in radiation levels in the area. But President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of deliberately targeting the plant and warned of a continental nuclear threat. If there is an explosion, that's the end for everyone, Zelensky pleaded. Only Europe can stop the Russian forces before it's too late. Elsewhere across Ukraine, Russia ramped up efforts to capture major cities after seizing Kherson. The strategic southern city of Mariupol is crying for aid as it came under constant bombardment. Russian troops are also closing in on the Black Sea port of Odessa, while intensifying assaults on Chernihiv in the north. In Lviv, which was still largely unscathed, residents rushed to prepare bomb shelters in case of a Russian onslaught. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
Financial pressure continues to pile on Russia as its ally China takes a cautious line. But a glimmer of hope surfaced when Russian and Ukrainian negotiators agreed to establish safety corridors to allow civilians to flee, although a ceasefire is far from sight. Sarah Wong again.
The Russian offensive is taking an increasingly staggering human toll in the heart of Europe. Hundreds of soldiers and civilians have died on the battleground and in bombardments, while millions more have been forced to leave their home to survive. Those fleeing for their lives included Orastai from Syria, which has been embroiled in an ongoing civil war that Russia was also a part of.
It's the same sounds I heard in Syria when I was in Syria. I know we have the same enemy, so I will always stand by you, and I'm trying now to volunteer.
During a second round of peace talks, Russian and Ukrainian officials agreed to set up humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians. Neither a ceasefire nor an armistice was achieved, although both sides said they would keep in touch. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky challenged Russian leader Vladimir Putin to meet with him directly. Despite reports of logistical challenges and heavy losses, Putin insisted all was going to plan and vowed to demilitarize Ukraine by all means. But his aggression plunged Russia deeper into a quagmire as more countries ramped up sanctions and businesses withdrew. Even its ally China is cautious. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, in which China has a stake of over 30%, halted all business with Moscow. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
The European Union has endorsed legislation that gives Ukrainian refugees protection in member countries for up to 3 years.
We have received already in Europe almost 1 million refugees from Ukraine. We're going to see millions more. And that is really why we need more solidarity and why we need this proper legislation to give the protection to people, to give them their rights. And of course, we're also going to need additional fundings.
There were emotional scenes at the main railway station in Kyiv as families and friends said goodbye. More than 500,000 Ukrainians are seeking shelter in Poland, the rest in neighboring countries. They can live and work in EU countries for 3 years and have access to education and medical services. As the refugee outflow continued, the United Nations expressed concern that non-whites, mainly students, were harassed at border exits.
The Secretary General is shocked by the numerous reports of racism, harassment, and discrimination that people of different races have been subjected to as they try to leave Ukraine, as well as in neighboring countries as they seek refuge from the conflict. It is vital that they ensure that all people, regardless of ethnicity, religion, or culture, are afforded the same treatment and protection.
In local news, for the third straight day, the city has recorded more than 50,000 new COVID cases. Health officials said infections are still on the rise, but reassured the public there is no oxygen shortage in hospitals. Maisie Mock reports.
Hong Kong added 52,523 COVID cases today. All except 11 were locally transmitted, although the tally was about 4,000 lower than yesterday. Albert Au from the Center for Health Protection said infections are on an upward trend and have yet to peak. Today's cases did not include those who did rapid antigen tests. There were 136 new deaths from the virus and a backlog of 52, taking the fatality toll so far in the fifth wave to 1,341. A 29-year-old man who lived in a residential care home for the disabled was the youngest patient to die in the past 24 hours. Health officials, meanwhile, said there's no evidence that hospitals lack oxygen supplies.
We have a significant increase in patients who need oxygen support, no matter in the hospital ward or maybe in the emergency department. I have to clarify that our central supply, there is no problem at all. We have some turnover hiccups about the cylinder oxygen. Now we are working on it. We try to enhance the turnover with some logistics issues, working with the company, and also we aim at some repositionings of the patients so that for the patients who are in need for the oxygen will be can access to the central supply.
Due to the high number of COVID cases in care homes for the elderly, the authorities have shortened the interval between the first and second Sinovac jabs for those residents from 28 days to 21 days. Unvaccinated care home residents who have recovered can have a shot after 4 weeks instead of 3 months. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Most court and tribunal hearings will be adjourned from Monday until April 11th. Only cases considered urgent can proceed during that period. According to a government statement, the arrangement is due to the city's worsening COVID outbreak. The judiciary said the decision was to strike a balance between public health considerations and due administration of justice. It added that there may be further adjustments if the public health situation deteriorates. All wet markets run by the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department are closing an hour early at 7 p.m. from today for daily disinfection as part of the fight against COVID. Meanwhile, Park & Shop and Watson's have put a limit on certain items customers can buy. Johanna Chan reports.
Just a day after supermarkets were replenished, some shelves started to empty out again. In a Park & Shop branch in Wan Chai, toilet paper rolls, a favorite item for hoarders when the pandemic began, were running low. To ensure that more people will get items they need, the supermarket giant is limiting rice, canned food, noodles, boxes of eggs, toilet paper, and medicine to 5 items per person. Customers said 5 items were enough for them, but some were upset with the long lines, pointing out 5 products from each category could still be a lot of items and could cause queues. Others were unhappy that authorities announced there was enough supply without using other methods to allay the public's concern of a possible lockdown and other COVID measures. Over in the healthcare and beauty industry, retailer Watson's is also limiting customers to 5 items each per transaction for pain relief and cold and flu medications. Both Watson's and Park & Shop, owned by CK Hutchison Holdings, pledged to keep in close contact with distributors. Johanna Chan, HKIBC.
COVID has forced the cancellation of the Changchao Bun Festival for the third year running. The organizers and the government had earlier planned to hold the island's biggest celebration in April or May, but they decided to scrap it to avoid large crowds in a small area. The highlight has been the bun scrambling contest. Islanders began the festival in the 18th century to celebrate the end of a plague. And coming up after the break. China's top political advisory body opens its annual conference in Beijing.